Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Now, standard procedure for our webinars is we go through some housekeeping rules first. So before we start the session today, just keep these things and it may help you assist with the webinar. So this is a recorded presentation, so there'll be a link sent to you in the next couple of days, or alternatively, it'll be on our website where you can, by the end of the week. During the session, we invite you to do some question and answers. To do that, please select the Q&A section on your screen. And the way we'll be doing it today is the questions and answers will be reviewed at the conclusion of the presentation. It'll be a bit easier for us to do it that way. If you're having issues with sound, please try to disconnect and reconnect or use the call-in number provided in the audio options on your screen. If you cannot see the presentation, please make sure you're using the WebEx app and not a browser, or you're outside your company server. In regards to CPT points and CIP points, a certificate will be emailed to you and you can claim your points online either with NEBA or ANZA websites. So that's the formalities out of the way. We're trying something different today. If you've logged into Berkeley webinars before, hopefully you've already noticed the difference. We're going to do a bit of a ramble today. We're going to call it a ramble.
Yeah, ramble, podcast,
yeah. Cool. Do we call it the front bar? But, copyright stops us from doing that. Some say liability underwriters do their best work in a bar, but we can't use that one, unfortunately.
No.
We're in the office, not the office hotel. Yeah. So today we've got Matt Konopka, Senior Liability Underwriter in New South Wales, and myself, Trevor Williamson, the State Manager of New South Wales. So we're going to talk about fundamentals of product liability. I think, Matt, the public liability seems to get a lot more of the limelight, and rest assured today we're not talking about labour hire or contractors. I think, everyone's well aware of that, and it gets presented a lot at the moment. So we're going to look at the other side of the liability spectrum, which is the product liability. And we've called it fundamentals. So if there's some veterans out there, a bit like ourselves, hopefully you get something out of it. Some of it may be a little bit beginner level, but we hopefully that someone can get everything out of it. It's actually quite extensive, the product liability. There's a lot of aspects to it, and a lot of aspects people don't necessarily think about all the time. So hopefully, we can bring that to your attention today. So, let's have a look at what we're going to talk about when we're talking product liability.
Yeah, what's up?
What's up? Yeah, well, we will definitely go in the definition of it, and that's probably, we don't want to bore you with the technical stuff and wordings and so forth, but we'll definitely go into the definition because it's well worth understanding exactly what a product is. It's probably broader than most people think. We'll delve a little bit about the differences on the limits and occurrences for product liability, and that stems right into that the product liability runoff cover, which we don't get asked a lot about. But
no, we perhaps should.
Perhaps should. And I think perhaps, if there's a lesson to all the brokers out there, it's, thinking about product liability runoff, and we'll give some examples there and
keep it in mind.
Keep it in mind. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And then, of course, when we're talking product liability, it brings into the two extensions on every liability policy you can purchase in the market, and that's recall and E&O. So we'll also delve into those a little bit more and give some examples. So today we're going to give you some claims examples, a little bit of technical and a little bit of our views on the market and what we see.
Make it fun, informative.
Yeah. Try our best.
As much as we can.
That's right. That's right. So we're going to whack right into, straight off the technical back. What is a product? Now, I'm not going to read the definition there, the first point. I'll let you read that off your screens, but I think what we're trying to get to here is that a product has a very, very, very broad definition, right? It is not just someone who sells a product. That's clearly what a product is, but there's so many broad aspects to it. It can be that if you go in and repair something, or what you repair becomes your product. If you hire something out, that's your product. Modify, whatever you touch, yours. And then you leave with a third party, or it's no longer in your possession, is your product. And I think that's where I think it's easy to think of manufacturers, wholesalers, retailers as having a product exposure, but let's look at excavators. You know, they're digging holes, they're building things, footpaths. That's all their product as well.
Everything here is a product.
Everything's in here product, so we better be very careful. We're surrounded by products.
Everything has a chance to injure us.
That's right.
Or damage our stuff.
So be careful of your desk. That's a product as well. So you know
the risks we take in this industry.
That's right. We're surrounded by them. Surrounded by them. And to expand a little bit more too in products and showing it's not just a physical item, you know, it can be design formulas and specifications can be included as a product. So that's always very interesting and probably a point where not a lot of people think about. And of course, we've got the old deemed manufacturer. I'm sure most people do hear this terminology because it's based on consumer law that once you import a product in, you're the deemed manufacturer, and we'll delve a little bit more into that as later.
Got an example.
And another one you may see, friendly liability underwriters put on there is efficacy exclusions. So every product effectively has a level of efficacy, and it's a really important consideration, and understanding why a liability underwriter will look to exclude efficacy on some products. Efficacy, if you're not quite sure what it is the intention of the product's performance. So, the high risk efficacy products would be weighing or scientific equipment.
Helmets, safety,
personal protection equipment,
Waterproofing.
safety equipment,
waterproofing,
membranes. There's quite a lot of products out there that you will find will attract that efficacy exclusion from an underwriter. Now, it's an interesting one because it's the performance of the product. It's not so much what happens if there's a manufacturing fault. It's not clear cut. So you really do have to look at those exclusions, and I think most insurers have different exclusions and so forth. So it's something to really look out for when you do that. So, but I think you're best to discuss efficacy around or efficacy exclusions and the cover for efficacy with your underwriter to get a full understanding of that. So definitely something to think about.
All right, so we will talk about product liability and what it involves. So basically speaking, it involves the risk that an insured company's product will cause an injury or property damage to a third party. It's fair to say that if a product does create an injury or damage, it's defective. Right? No one wants defective products in the market. It's bad juju. And there's three different types of defects that are out there, or three major, I should say. One would be the design defect, but that's more for our PI friends to consider, unless, of course, you do opt to get a manufacturer's E&O out. The one we concentrate on most of the time is manufacturing defects. So basically, if it comes out of the conveyor belt wrong, notwithstanding you have 99 that come out right, there is a chance that one doesn't come out right, and all of them, and they're flooded out there in the market. So that's no one's having a good day if something happens like that. And one that I think people miss as well is marketing defects, right? So failure to warn. If you don't warn people about your products or the type of inherent risks there are, that's defective, and that could come back on us. So maybe I'll throw some examples like toys. Don't give little toys to little people or babies. That's a choking hazard. So you should be putting a bit of a sticker on that.
I guess it comes down to, Matt, now you look at some products, the list of warnings is this long.
And
they state the bleeding obvious.
Yeah, exactly right. But the masses need to know.
They do see many legal reports on marketing defects, and they always find something that you didn't warn someone about. Probably was more stupidity than anything else. But still have to tell them.
You still have to tell them. I mean, cleaning products, don't eat pods. That was a thing, wasn't it? People started eating like, now you got a label from it. Don't eat it. Candles, make sure that don't put it near a place that has a draft. People need to know. And that's sometimes one that gets a little bit overlooked. But hey, there you go. We'll
definitely assists in the defence of a claim. That's
exactly right.
If someone's inappropriately using your product, your marketing defects and what you generally advise to people can help in the defence.
Yeah. Okay, I told you, don't do that, right? So we'll get to the manufacturing defect side because, of course, that's what we're sort of concentrating on. Now, it's important to note, for those that don't know, products liability falls under the doctrine of strict liability. So what that basically means is that you don't have to prove negligence in a product's case. An injured party or a party that suffers damage, they don't have to go through the whole hoops of saying, a duty of care was owed to me, there was a breach of that duty, there's causation, your product caused it, and I'm injured and I demand a remedy. None of that. It's basically, hey, your product did it, pay up. And it's fair to say that such a thing exists. Society expects it, and so does the law. You don't want products out there where an injured party is struggling to get some sort of remedy, because the power of a manufacturer versus an injured party is a little bit unbalanced. You don't want, the manufacturer could easily go, well, prove that it wasn't during the delivery of that product that it was defective, or prove that it wasn't someone else's fault but mine. It's pretty much, if the buck is passed to you, you're the one that is able to wear it. And I think it's socially fair that is the case.
And I also think, Matt, when you think of that, it's so much different the way you dealt with a product liability claim compared to the public side. You think of a slip and fall incident, there's definitely, was it an obvious risk? Can it be? Yeah. You do have an ability to defend a slip and fall claim or a public liability claim on the basis of, were you negligent or did you not, do appropriate measures? Whereas you're right, on a product side, it is so much harder to defend. And I think about, if I buy a product, I don't expect it to injure me.
Yes.
Or I don't expect it to damage my lounge or anything along those lines. So we have an expectation, and the courts definitely, and the legislation protects you.
Yeah, that. Yeah. And I guess at that point, that's what products aggregate versus public.
Absolutely.
Because if someone slips and falls, obviously as a reasonable person, because we're all reasonable, that's what we cover. We cover reasonable care. If you see that, you immediately mitigate it, wouldn't you? You'd be like, okay, they fell over a gutter, let's fix that gutter, let's put some line on it. And that's obviously not going to happen again. But if you have products out in the market,
they're already in the market,
and
can't actually mitigate with it.
It's hard to mitigate, but also you could have an occurrence on Monday, and then you could have another occurrence on Friday.
Hence, we'll talk about recall.
Yes, yes. But back to products and strict liability. It's important to understand for all the freshies and greenies, shout out, product liability does not cover the product itself. It's consequential losses that are created by said product that are covered. And best to put it as an example, so I'll throw in a claims example here. Let's pretend we have a company that's importing a product and they're installing and distributing, delivering boilers, bringing them in from Hungary. Shout out to all the Hungarians that are tuning in. Let's pretend that this product is defective.
One of them.
There you go. Shout out.
Welcome, Hungary.
Yeah. Let's pretend that this product is defective. But fun fact, boilers explode. It's a catastrophic event, and a source, if you could see down the bottom there, at your own leisure, you could have a little bit of a gander as to what that sort of looks like. But no one's having a happy day if a residential boiler explodes. And let's just say this client that's brought them in, they're the ding manufacturer under the ACO. So the buck is passed to them. Now, the product liability will pick up the resulting damage of that event. So if you watch that clip, you could see that the walls break, the roof breaks because it just flies to the moon. You probably have water damage. We have cleanup costs. Your dog might get injured. You might have to take time off work not the dog. You might have to take time off work to be able to sort this out. Now, these are the demands that injured party is going to bring forth, but they'll also say, I want a new boiler. We're not paying, and I guess the new boiler is the least of the concern because you have so many other things that's being put on the bill. But the excess in the boiler is a business risk that's borne by the client. Everything else, I guess, always depending on the facts and circumstances are covered.
I think that's an important thing. Product liability claim, they're never fully indemnified. It's always a part indemnity in regards to the product's not covered. So that part will always be removed from it. So yeah, it's a good example. And you should expect that when there is a product liability claim, there'll be a proportion that won't be covered because it's replacement of your product, which is excluded by the word.
Yes. So we touched on the ACL and being manufacturer. Now,
so ACL for those greenies.
Oh, it's greenies, yeah. Australian consumable. Write it down.
Very important.
There's a reason for that. I guess we touched on it a little bit earlier. It's virtually, it protects the consumer and allows for a little bit more hassle-free recourse. I talked originally about, imagine an injured party trying to go for a manufacturer, a big manufacturer. Imagine that manufacturer is overseas. You've got all these other hoops that need to be sort of considered. You've got a foreign entity, foreign governments that perhaps don't recognise judgments here. You've got cultural issues. The way they handle, do things might not be, I guess, the way we do things, and that just causes problems. So I think something like that is perhaps the best way to go about it, and we rate for that. So brokers might notice that even if a client's retailing, we do ask the question, do you import? And that's like virtually the sticking point to us that indicates, well, if you're importing, you're technically a manufacturer, and because of the ACL, you should be rated as such.
Yes, it's really a fairness test, isn't it? Imagine if everyone had to recover compensation off people from China or Taiwan or Vietnam. I mean, it would be an absolute nightmare. So it's the government protecting the citizens of Australia in regards to
yes,
fair and reasonable.
Yes, and I mean, the assumption is that most of the time, because a lot of products are made and manufactured from the Far East. But I've got an example where that sort of wasn't the case. I'm watering it down a little bit, but it's the chair example that I had, which we had. Sorry. Oh, there we go. Got him.
Hopefully our lounge doesn't do that, mate.
Yeah. I was actually trying to get an AI picture of the guy falling in an air, but it just didn't work. So I just went to...
AI's let you down.
Yeah, I just went to the memes, which I think works. We'll see. We'll find out. So we had an insurer that imports and distributes luxury furniture from Italy. You'd think that high quality.
Well, it's not China.
Oof, yeah, you'd think awesome. They they did the whole suite: distribution, delivery, furnishing, installation, all the jazz. And they had high-end product. You don't expect anything to go wrong until it does. So they filled an order for an airport. Some mate decided had a long day, deserve a sit. Seat fails, and you have an injury. So, and that happened a few days after they furnished it. So you can't really put forward the wear and tear argument. It's like, well, that happened. What's up? Again, strict liability ACL. We come to the party, but an insurer does have the right to find recourse and recovery. And in this instance, they did knock on the door of the Italian manufacturer and asked them, hey, that's your product. Can you pay up? They were like, scusi, no. And we were like, okay, let's, I guess that's that. It would be too expensive to take it anywhere further.
The commercial realities of recovery come into play.
Correct. And then you wouldn't expect that from a European country,
right? High-end product, you'd think they'd be a bit more worried about reputational damage.
Yeah.
So forth, no.
But then the argument for them would be like, well, how do you know it wasn't during the flight? That's not up to us. And then you argue, they might not have the same rules.
And I think you're right there too. Is like you're trying to convince an Italian company in Italy that we're paying a claim under our own Australian consumer law legislation.
Yeah, and they're like, what's that? Yeah.
So they may not have the strict liability of the consumer law protections that we do.
Yes.
So therefore, in recovery, they're saying, well, no, not our problem.
No, that's it.
The guy was too heavy.
Yeah. Ciao, arrivederci. Shout out to the Italians.
That's right.
So,
shouting out to a lot of people.
Yeah, all nationalities. But yes, things to think about. I think important points. Yeah, ACL, strict liability. Yeah, I've got nothing more to really say about that. So we're now on to the little extensions.
Yeah, the one we mentioned this at the intro. Now, product liability runoff cover. I think I'm lucky to get a query from a broker on runoff cover once every 3 months.
Good drills when they do ask.
Yes, yeah, it is good when you do see brokers, thinking of this aspect of risk when there's many instances that can occur, and there's some instances where it's not a problem. And I think, as prudent brokers, you should be really asking your insured about that. You've seen the definition of product. There's a very broad range. You don't just think if you've got a manufacturer or you're selling products, you've got the product exposure. It can be tradespeople, it can be excavators, it can be internal fit outs, furniture wholesalers, it can be all these kind of people that will have a ongoing product exposure. And the liability wording creates that runoff requirement because it's an occurrence based. Now, we won't get too technical on occurrence, but simple example is think of a retaining wall. The retaining wall was built in 2010. The retaining wall collapses in 2025. The occurrence is 2025. It does not go back to when it was constructed in 2010. So the property damage or personal injury happened when the wall collapsed, and that's 2025. So if that company that built that retaining wall ceased trading in 2020 and the wall collapses in 2025, they're without product runoff cover, they're uninsured for that exposure. A big concern, and it does happen, and people do get caught out. I have seen people get caught out in my career with not considering runoff cover. So therefore, is it a good idea? Yes, it is. And it really comes down to asking the questions of your insured when they're selling their business, if they're retiring or ceasing to trade anymore, what they're doing with it, where their past liabilities are going to go. When some people are purchasing a business, you can get them to buy your past liabilities.
That's expected. You'll normally.
It is common. It is common. Therefore, not everyone. Therefore, if your past liabilities are bought, your product liability runoff cover is not required. Okay, or you rest easy that if there is an occurrence that happens in the future from a product that was supplied in the past, you're covered and you're not going to lose your house. So how does it work? It's relatively easy, and I have numerous queries where brokers suggest the current liability under will not offer product runoff cover, and I just think that cannot happen. Any underwriter who's going to provide a public and products liability policy has to provide runoff cover, in my opinion. You will not convince another insurer to take on the runoff cover from someone who was holding the policy.
Yes, correct.
We wouldn't do it, and the clear reason being is you were never on risk for that policy, and you never got the premium for those previous years. So why would we go in there and buy someone else's runoff cover? It is funny, but I do get that a lot, that likely underwriters will not provide that cover. I just think it's inexperienced underwriters, and you just need to go to management and force them to do it, because if they're selling that product, I think they're obliged to provide product runoff cover.
Yes.
And we do, and how we normally do it, it really depends on the product. It's good to have a conversation with the broker around their product exposure, because you've got the very short life products compared to the very long life products. And that really depends. It should be deciding on whether you need or not. Examples: dairy products. They don't last more than 2 weeks. So if you're selling cakes and things like that, well, then you don't really have to worry about someone dying in 5 years from eating a cake, because that comes down to a serious question of why they ate that cake 5 years' time.
Should have warned them.
That's right. Should have warned them. Do not eat this cake in 5 years' time. May cause injury. That's right. But then you've also got the long-term products, thinking carport, right? If you putting carports up, that could be there for 30 odd years.
Yeah.
Right? So you do have a runoff cover exposure if your business ceases. And that's where the way we deal with it at the moment, we may offer an annual renewal with runoff cover only. And then at a period of time, we may allow you to buy out a certain period of time, say 7 years or something along those lines, until everyone's comfortable that there shouldn't really be the ongoing product exposure is minimal or non-existent. And that's how it can happen. It's not great for a business if they cease and they have to keep buying these covers, but it's like that, or sell your house, to be honest. If something bad goes wrong. How much does it cost?
Depends.
That's that great underwriting question. So it really does. That's right. It really does come down to many factors: how long you were trading, how long your products remain in the public, or are they dangerous or high risk products and things. So it's really going to vary, but you really should see a significant discount in your premium for just buying runoff cover, because you don't have the public exposure, you don't have the contractor exposure, you don't have people slipping in your showroom exposure. So you're only paying for the product side. So really you should see a 50% reduction, and then it can go down every year. And that's subjectivity, no claims. You've got claims, different kettle of fish, and a totally different rating method. So I think we'll give an example on runoff cover, and I definitely, like I said, in my time, I've seen people not buy runoff cover and be caught by claims. So it can definitely happen, and it should definitely be a conversation you have. So this one, we won't go through it too much, but in this case, and this is probably the most dangerous one, when you're looking to retire and you're not going to sell your business to anyone, right? That is a clear one where no one's taking on your past liabilities. You do have some kind of product liability, unless you're a property owner. Because you have no products.
Here, I think if you're selling widgets, and you had enough of it, hang up your boots and your apron.
Correct.
You don't want to dishonor the family name. You're just like, oh, I'm done. You don't tap your hands out.
No.
You've got, because you've got to understand your product is still out there. It's still among the masses. It still could cause issues, which is sort of what we're trying to.
Correct.
To identify.
Correct. So it's worthwhile. You need to have that conversation with, number one, the insured about where their past liabilities for products are going. And if nowhere, well, then talk to your underwriter in regards to looking at coming up with some kind of runoff cover. Clearly, it's the client's choice. And if they choose not to, well, then you've done your job as a broker in some regards. Move on to the next one, and the next extension that's very common, and I don't think we need to explain it too much to a lot of brokers, because it's one of the more easier ones to understand. Recall, it means bringing your product back. It does vary a little bit in the market, but generally most, and I think it varies from the triggers, what triggers a recall and what can trigger a claim under a policy. Insurers may have slightly varying insurance clauses. But ultimately, all the recall in the market is expenses only. Now, this is very, very important to understand. It's expenses only. And we like to continually call it recall expenses, so we're not misinforming you around the name of it. I've seen many product recall claims. The biggest component of all of them is your product. And what you need to understand is, as per all liability policies, you do not get replacement of your product. No. So the biggest component of a recall claim is the product, and it is excluded, and it will not be covered under the recall expenses extensions that all liability underwriters put on these. If you want that covered, you need to then look at a standalone recall cover. And you'll pay the premium for it, because it will actually cover things like that, or you can choose to cover it. So that's the huge thing to remember.
Hot tip for young players as well. Correct. Asking us for $1 million recall, we do oftentimes go back asking, perhaps you want a full-blown recall. That is a little bit, I guess it depends on.
Absolutely. We see, people wanting $1 million recall on a business that turns over $400,000. When you think of the expense coverage you're getting from this, there's a reason why it's relatively cheap in the market. and sometimes thrown in for nothing.
Yeah,
Is because it's not a huge cover. To be honest, the claims I've seen, 100,000 or 250,000 supplements cover most costs.
Yeah.
Depending on how big your business is. But what are the expenses? Pretty simple. They're the communications that you are recalling your product, the transport costs of returning the product, storage, additional personnel. So if you are selling to Kmart, Kmart will charge you the hourly rates for people to remove the products from the shelves and send them back. That's pretty common. And that's when we do look at recall, we do look at who do you supply your goods to. If you're just sending them out mail order individuals, it's not too bad. It's just the postage of returning the products. But if it is one of the major retail lines like Coles, Woolies, Kmart's, Bunnings, they will charge you quite a lot of money to send the products back because they'll charge you for the hourly rate. So that's a larger component. And that's probably where you can look at the higher limits because your expenses will be higher. And the disposal and destruction of the cost. As you can see there, no cover for the product itself. And it is always, absolutely always the biggest component. Sometimes 80% of the claim is the product itself.
Yep.
So something to remember there. Mate, do you want to handle this one?
Yeah, I can.
It's not PI, Jerry.
That's the main point of this preso. I won't go through the definitions. That's pretty much verbatim, I think, from our endorsement. But the main point with this one is it's not a quasi PI cover. It is specific. It's manufacturers' errors and omissions. So it's very product centric. And I mean, I'll say in some ways fairly narrow. You have to, in my understanding of it, you have to sort of be at some point in the supply chain for it to sort of be in effect.
Correct.
I'll give an example, and I've got it in the next slide. So let's pretend you're a widget manufacturer, and someone else needs your widget to make a bigger widget that another third party needs, right? So say they come down to you and say, build this widget for me. You build it. It doesn't fit into whatever they want. And that person that's relying on that, who had a contract with them, says, well, I can't accept this. I needed it at this time. I'm losing money. Here's the bill. And they send it to you because you're the one that sort of made the error. That's where I see that sort of trigger.
Totally agree.
Because with this sort of clause, you don't have an injury. No one's injured from it. Nothing's got damaged. So where is the recourse? You've got virtually this endorsement. And I guess as well, another hot tip for young players and brokers, if they're having a chat with their clients, sometimes we ask when it comes to E&O, we ask for customer sign-off. Is there formal customer sign-off procedures? Because this whole thing can be eliminated if the third party comes to you, you do a sample, and they go, yes, this is the exact thing I want. Sign off, no problems. But if you go, honky-dory and forget to carry the one, then that's sort of where this applies. Similar to recall, if we get requests for $1 million, $2 million, we start to think, why? This is probably meant to be something that our PI colleagues should be having a look at.
We'll have serious questions around that, because are you trying to fulfill a contractual obligation to have $1 million PI? And that's where it gets back to that. It's not PI, Jerry.
Nope.
Please don't think it is, because it's not. And Matt's very right in that. I think that claims example is really good. E&O is one of the hardest ones to understand a claim. When we do get E&O claims, a lot of us have to scratch our head and think through the process of whether the E&O is triggered or not. They're not black and white. They're not easy, and it really is. And I think Matt's right. The supply of a product, and if you think of a PI policy, that's a professional service, as Matt and I discussed earlier. That's a defined service that you're providing. E&O has nothing about professional services. It doesn't include that. And to be honest, if there is a professional service and they're charging a fee, the wording is going to exclude it anyway, irrespective of an E&O being on there.
Yeah.
So So thinking you're getting E&O and it's a quasi PI is just it's a misconcept that a lot of people have, and you'd be amazed the amount of requests we get
requests
for E&O on tradespeople and builders and things like that. They need to be looking at proper professional indemnity.
If they can get it, if they can.
Well, yeah, they could, but they can. Yeah, and I understand that conundrum of the contracts now requesting it, but I just don't think the right idea is to think solves that problem, because it definitely doesn't.
Yeah.
And I think of another claim, and there's the thing is with as well, a lot of insurers have different extensions. They're not all the same. Unlike the recall where I think it's 95% the same, it actually has a lot of difference. The extension from different insurers. Some will be product only, like we are. We're fully disclosing that. But that's why we call ours a manufacturer's E&O. Again, we don't want to misinform people. We want them to be realising it is a product-based E&O only. There are E&O covers in the market that offer services, but then again, I think one of those services, that's not professional services, because again, it's excluded. They are things like you double booked a function room or something along those lines, where you've made an error and you've cost someone some money.
Someone's financially
worse off. That's right. It's not about them giving professional advice and causing an E&O. It's about them doing something in their general business that disrupts the supply chain or causes someone some loss.
Yeah.
Like I said, the hardest claims to understand and the hardest ones to give examples for. We hope that one's a pretty simple example, and we tried to make it simple to give you a bit of an idea and prove that it's not PI.
Yes.
I don't think we can stress that anymore. How are we going for time?
I think we're good. We're
pretty
11:40
time.
Yes. I think
all right. Well, we're going to head into our questions.
And so, any question, queries, or doubtful points? Try to. Doesn't work.
All right, well, this might not be working that well, the question section. What we would do is, I can't really see if there was any questions. Maybe our presentation was saying, but Matt, didn't we get any questions?
Yeah.
But what we will promise to do is we will review the questions and answer them after. There's not much more to go on, really. If you're not sure on anything I want to discuss, please give Matt and I a call. We're happy to talk in more detail if required about it.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think we're good to go, mate.
That's it. Podcasts. This was very new. This is a very non-Berkeley production. That's right.
We send a survey, so please either like it or
give
not.
Us a like, or don't.
Or don't.
Give us a 5-star. Or give us a 1, but tell us ways we can improve, because that's what we're all about. We're all about improvement. So,
correct. So it's a new format, new try. So we hope it was a bit more engaging, and hopefully you got some information.
It was fun. It was light-hearted, So that's that.
All right, everyone. Well, you can all have an early mark for lunch, and we look forward to dealing with you.
See you in the next one. Yeah.
Thanks very much, everyone.
All right.